James is having a lentil walnut burger with some homemade rye and barley flour bread and homemade pickles and homemade ketchup and some Greek salad on the side. And mine will be the same, but I'm having wild rice instead of burger.
There'll be some protein in that. This is wild rice. We got a hull on it, or whatever they call it. It's good. Right?
Well, it's wild rice isn't actually rice at all.
Okay,
That's
but
the
it's some
interesting
sort
thing
of a
about
grain,
rice.
no?
No, it's a seed.
Okay.
And honestly, I can't really tell you the difference, but I can tell you that it's not rice, and
Okay.
it's not grain. It's a seed.
Okay.
It's a completely different plant, I guess. You can look into the genus names of things if you're interested and try to figure it out for yourself. I don't know.
Yeah. It might just largely be a matter of categorization. But I'm a little bit skeptical of some of the categorizations.
Yeah.
You know how that changes.
I know. I don't know either.
Yeah.
Boston Legal Season 4. So this is just, I think, the first half of it. I think we'll be getting more in. But I like the show. It's interesting to watch. I mean, basically, it's a comedy, and it's a...
Yes, it is. Welcome relief to so many of the...
I mean, they get a bit
legal shows, I
preachy
think.
at times.
Well, it's in a
Both
funny
things.
sort of way, you know,
Yeah, I
like
guess.
George Bernard Shaw tended to be pretty peachy, but some of the stuff's I find all of his stuff entertaining, but I guess he might be.
Well,
an
I
acquired
enjoy the
taste
show
for
a
it.
lot. Anyway, I mean, it's good to get some information and be wary about it at the same time. I mean,
Sure.
it's always good to, however you come across things at first, it's like watching this or reading some magazine or listening to the CBC. It's good to actually look things up, you know?
Exactly.
Like-
I mean, they're raising issues that have to be researched.
Sure.
I'm not going to make any sort of decision based
No.
on what they say.
And, but at the same time, I mean, they brought up, there's an episode of an innocent man, and he may not be innocent of all of the things that, I mean, he'd been charged with things in the past, and he was saying, well, I was a drug addict, and that's why I was involved in armed robbery, and this and that, and it's like,
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Well-
The one led to the other? Is that what he was saying?
Mhm.
Or was he just trying to finance his drug addict thing? Anyway,
I mean, I had a cousin who he robbed at least one bank.
serious
I
stuff.
think he did several banks.
Mm.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but
He eventually got caught, did he?
well, he turned himself in.
Well,
he
that was
he
nice
was a
of him.
drug addict,
Mm.
and so he would take. And I don't know what drugs he was robbing the bank for. But then he'd get the money, get the drugs, turn himself in because he didn't actually want to be a bank robber. It looked like, but. And at the same time, my mother was working in a bank, and my parents were not impressed with the fact that he was a bank robber. So,
Yeah. I mean, people don't have to rob banks, they can thieve stuff. There's a huge difference.
I have no idea. But somehow, I mean, if society creates drug addicts, society should take care of drug addicts. But they don't. And it's an interesting kind of situation because the whole illegal drugs trade is really, the guys at the top don't get busted because they're legitimate businessmen, right? And they're doing this and somehow they make the money real through other means, like whether they own hotels or they own restaurants or they own
chicken restaurants like that. What is it?
yeah. I don't know. I don't know if fast food really. Yeah, but I mean, other restaurants you could see that. I mean, they could be eating like kings and say, oh yes, well we had some people in and they ordered the such and such, right? And so then that drug money is then justified and their meals are paid for, all their friends' meals are paid for, whatever. Like I remember an instructor in university, he was telling me, he was saying, well, it's not fair that, I mean, what do you think about it? He was saying how the prime minister, you can pay for taking the prime minister out for lunch. And then, I mean, the prime minister gets his meals paid for, and you have the prime minister's ear for however long, right? Mm-hmm. So you can set up an appointment for these things. And it's like, well, as well as that, you might, the business, the restaurant that you and the prime minister are going to might be actually run by drug dealers, and you know, it could be a whole, it's not only the fact that the prime minister is getting taken out to lunch and by some wealthy businessman who then has his ear. It's, you know, there's a lot to consider. Anyway, but what I was going to say, I mean, I wasn't even going to start getting into that. I was going to talk about this episode of The Innocent Man and how he blows up. First time he meets his attorney, he spits on her. And still, she's a amiable sort of person, and she really wants to believe that he's innocent, and they get him off. Spoiler alert. But he has a record, and I don't know. He's an aggressive personality type. It's obvious. He blows up. He explodes. I mean, passive people, yeah, if they're pushed, they can explode, but it's unlikely. Mm-hmm. Anyway, when a person's an aggressive personality type, they're weak, and it's not their fault that they have become aggressive personality types. They've been raised to be that way. But at the same time, it really is absolutely foolish to think, oh, well, this aggressive personality type is really passive. It's just, you know, circumstances make them aggressive or whatever. It's really unlikely that passive people become aggressive. In this instance, the guy might not have been a murderer. He might have been. He might have got off. He might be a guilty man and got off. Who knows? But one thing that was mentioned in that episode was the presumption of innocence. Until a person is charged and proven guilty, until they're proven guilty, they are presumed to be innocent. And I don't know, I'm hearing a lot on the CBC about a certain person's death who was, this person started, the death of this person started a whole bunch of protests about racial injustices and questioning the law, the police. And yes, police tend to be aggressive personality types, but when
very much so.
Dealing
That's according
with
to their
aggressive,
own account.
Yes, when dealing with aggressive personality types, which criminals tend to be, the only thing that aggressive personality types respect is aggression. That's all they respect. So you can't have passive personality types being the hands-on controllers of aggressive people. You need to stop breeding aggressive people and stop letting them into the country, frankly. So if you don't
That's just
want to have,
aggressive
if you
people.
want to defund the police, if you want to defund aggressive people to try to, these attack dogs, to try to keep your population of passive people safe, stop raising aggressive people. Stop it.
Defund hip hop. Yep. Yep. There are certain things where I think, for example, if someone is obviously having mental problems,
Well, definitely.
that maybe someone who's so
I
that
mean,
sort of stuff should be defunded.
We were
from
talking
police.
about that. We were talking about how you were mentioning I said we were talking about somebody had a sign on the back of their truck that said pro-democracy, liberals, right? And I think I tend to agree with that to some extent, because if you get too far, a lot of people who vote too far left-wing, they're not really, although they might be totally right, correct in their morals or whatever, but they're not taking into account the rest of the population. And as you've said, how will it play in Peoria?
Yeah, Richard Nixon said that.
Yeah.
How will it
And
play in Peoria?
not that I want to quote.
You don't want to be like Richard Nixon, but that is.
But basically, you have to think that way. You have to think, okay, well, as much as I believe much far differently than the liberals, well, where's the center ground? Where can we really expect the population to go along with? If not, then the right-wingers get in again. So, and do you want that? So if you vote too far
some
left-wing,
people do want it. You know?
then that's what happens. And in cases like this with, anyway. So, and, okay, well, I'll finish that thought. I got on a different thought because, so, then I was saying, well, with the liberals, I mean, there's the whole, we were talking about how Trudeau almost, well, he was going to get it passed. He almost got that. I said, law against anti-Semitism. And James said it was not that. And James was right. It wasn't a law against anti-Semitism. It was a law against Islamophobia. And
What was called Islamophobia.
yeah. And he was trying to get that passed. And the thing is phobias, that's a mental illness. And if a person has a mental illness, you cannot be charging them with something. That is wrong. And people should see that. But it's a weird time. And how you treat irrational fears is through education, through calm, honest education. And if there is a legitimate reason to be fearful once you've went through educating yourself or educating the population, then maybe that has to be dealt with, you know?
Yeah, so I've run across one faux left-winger who was accusing Ian Hersey Ali of being an Islamophobe. Wow. You know, like, and that's 3 syllables. Awawa. She's got a reason to fear at least certain forms of Islam. She's got many reasons, actually. Many arranged marriage, gone through cutting, female genital mutilation. Call it what it is, for
definitely
Pete's
don't call
sake.
it cutting. That's
Cutting. That's a euphemism. God. I ran across another faux lefty who was saying, what does she know about Islam? Okay, let's look at her history. Now, maybe this is all made up, but she comes from Somalia. She had arranged marriage that she was escaping from, not officially as a refugee, apparently. so she was kicked out of Holland because she wasn't considered an official refugee. But this fellow, apparently, that she was getting married to, was supposed to get married to, came from the benighted country of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And she spent time, I think, in Saudi Arabia. She spent time in Holland. 10% of the population possibly there is Muslim.
Well, they can look into it themselves.
Yeah, the thing is,
Look into it yourself.
my sources might be incorrect. I understand. Like, I've read
But there
one
was
of her
another
books.
episode on this about cultural, accepting different cultures, and how the European Union, was it?
Yeah, I think so. I
Was
think I know where
they
you're
were
going
saying, I haven't looked this up,
Mhm.
so it was just on this show.
Mhm.
So they were saying in the show that the European Union has accepted bullfighting as
A legitimate cultural practice.
yes. So you can't say anything against. Well, you could. I could.
Who knows?
I will. I will say that bullfighting is barbaric and disgusting.
Mhm.
And if I'm not necessarily saying that everyone that is from a culture where they have bullfighting is disgusting.
Or discussion.
But those people who get off on that shit, yeah, they're barbaric and disgusting. And I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway.
Doesn't matter if it's in Mexico or
Doesn't
Spain.
matter where it is.
I don't know if they have it in Portugal.
There's,
I
some
think they have it in
cultures are
southern
more
France.
barbaric and disgusting than others. And at one time, I mean, we were talking yesterday about Stonehenge. And
This one is a classic.
So,
That's 3 syllables on the classic.
you have to actually look at things honestly and say, what is most likely?
What is most
Probably human sacrifice. And
So
that wasn't that long ago. Not that long ago. So, I mean, one has to look at one's own culture or the culture of their ancestors or whatever and say, yeah, at one time, we're probably genetically, I have a few rapists in my genetic gene pool way back or something. There's not, you can't just say, oh, well, I feel this way and I'm sure my ancestors were just super great or whatever. And we have to look at cultures presently in the world in that same way. So we can't assume, oh, well, our ancestors were all awful because they were a certain color or something like that. They had a certain skin color. That's ridiculous too. So, but anyway, innocence until proven guilty, going back to that, listening to the CBC, and I've heard a lot that there was about the police officers, or at least one of them, being a murderer. The murder of a certain person. And
they were
as far
saying
as I know,
he killed or he murdered.
So the
and it's multiple,
person who died keeps being referred to as a murder victim. And I don't think that's been proven. So...
Well, one of the problems is there were 3 different autopsies. One was an independent. Now this is Orwell speak, okay, double speak, an independent thing commissioned by the family. Mm-hmm. Well, the family isn't very objective because they were calling this fella gentle, and his criminal record disproves that. Mm-hmm. And they were saying he was a family guy. Well, I don't know. There are stories about his family, but he held up a woman, apparently not pregnant, but apparently a child was in the background. You know what I'm saying? He and I don't know how many other people, 3 other people, 6 other people. I keep running across varying accounts, but to be a family kind of person, it's just not enough to take care of your own family. And the sources I've run across indicate he wasn't terribly solicitous of his own family, but it's taking care of other people's families and stuff like that. You don't hold up anyone, much
That
less
does not
someone who's
matter
a
to me.
child. Okay.
What matters to me is that the courts have not proven
Well, that's the ultimate thing.
that is the ultimate thing.
Yeah.
So if whatever the story ends up, whatever the verdict ends up being, we can call whatever, we can call it murder if it's murder, call it, but until it is, that should not be on the CBC. And it's been on the CBC repeatedly, and this is not right. This is
like I was going to say.
Honestly, I think the CBC needs to be charged. If it turns out that the police officers involved were innocent, the CBC needs to be charged.
Oh, and should
the government needs to pay
reparations.
reparations to those police officers if it turns
I'm
out
using
that
that
they're
term
innocent.
advisedly.
I
too,
mean,
not
I
damages.
am not one to side with the police
No, me neither.
because I don't like aggressive personality types.
No.
But I'm not one to side with criminals either because I don't like
That is
aggressive
funny.
personality
Me neither.
types.
That is funny. Yeah.
So,
me neither.
I believe strongly in the system of law. I don't believe in anarchy, and
Me neither.
I would like to see justice occur. So if it turns out that through the court system these police officers are guilty, then they need to be treated as such. But until
any
they
one of them.
are found guilty, they are presumed innocent. And the CBC needs to smarten up and stop allowing people to call these police officers or a certain police officer or even refer to the person who died as a murder victim if it turns out that person was not a murder victim. I mean, it's clear. If you're referring to somebody as a murder victim, they had a murderer. Who's the murderer? And so whether you say, okay, well, that person didn't refer to the police officer or any police officer as a murderer, well, yeah, they did. If they said that person was that the person who died at the hands of the police or in whatever,
in their
custody was murdered, then yes, that's what they're saying. And the CBC needs to be held accountable. The people who are interviewed who say that need to be held accountable too. But they are given a platform on the CBC, and when the CBC is airing this stuff and not editing it out or not bleeping it out or whatever, it's wrong. They cannot be calling people murderers. Presumed innocent. They have to be presumed innocent until proven guilty.
So I got a little bit sidetracked. So the family commissioned an autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
This was after, like the throat wasn't available, parts of the throat weren't available, apparently, for analysis. And that would show whether it was smothered or something like that. And of course, they claimed it was independent, and like I was saying, they were anything but reliable when it came to characterizing the fellow who died. And, it wasn't an independent sort of thing. And it came out and said that dude was suffocated. The initial autopsy, I think, was carried out by someone working for the large city involved. And it just said died of, I think it was coronary pulmonary failure.
They can look it up themselves.
Yeah, well, I'm just, the big trouble is, so what Pauline is talking about, I think, is the morality of it. It is immoral, I think, to rush to judgment. Unfortunately, and it is unfortunate, the county did a secondary kind of autopsy, and they actually called it a homicide. So I'm afraid it was responding to political pressure, But I don't know where the legality of it is. They might be able to say, well, this is what the autopsy says, and it was carried out by a unofficial, people working for the county.
Well, as far as I know, no court has passed sentence
I think
yet.
really it should be up to the court, and up until the court comes up with a decision, it should be alleged murder, alleged killing, alleged murderer,
Yes.
alleged killer.
That would be okay. Alleged murder would be
Yeah.
fine, but not.
No, not the way they're characterizing. But again, I don't know what the actual legality is. They could, have taken to court or something like that. Said, well, there's this particular county said that it was homicide. Now, I
Yeah,
think they're grossly mistaken. The fellow, there was a killing took place. The fellow killed himself. He took a swash of drugs, and I'm going to say it right now.
We don't know that. I mean, the information that we get online may not be accurate either.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying I
There's
think.
not a court ruling yet, as far as I know.
No, I'm saying I think. That's what happened. If I didn't, I should. At any rate, I think someone should say this right now. I don't think anyone has. I don't get this off of any online thing. The important thing is, unless it's been CGI, is the body cams of the two cops, Kuhn and what you might as well mention, and what the other guy, I think it might be Lane or something like that. The body cam stuff gives it away. The guy who's come up for the most serious murder charges, they had so much. There was someone who I was saying, well, they had him in the vehicle. This is even before I saw the body cam thing. They had him in the vehicle. Person just blew up on me over the phone. No way. Okay. I hadn't seen it. I just had read it on the internet. I said, how could someone lie about that? And of course, the sources I ran across were right. They had him in the back of the SUV. They dragged him all the way through. Why did they drag him out? Was it if they're going to kill him, why not kill him in the SUV? Why not turn off their body cams? Why drag him out on the street where people could be taking pictures and stuff like that? It doesn't make sense. The guy, if we're going to adopt that sort of thing, then the guy who did the killing on that scenario would be insane.
Yeah.
And he could plead
you're right.
insanity.
You're right. It's nuts.
We dragged dude out on the street, and there's multiple witnesses. The scene's already been going for about 8 minutes or something like that. And there are people kibitzing and stuff like that, saying, oh, stop trying to win. And they're not talking to the cops. Other people saying, stop resisting and stuff like that. That's kind of significant. At any rate, the reason why they dragged him out of the vehicle, from what I can tell, this guy was saying he's claustrophobic, being kind to him, as kind as cops can be, which isn't necessarily that kind. They made a mistake. Because they're saying, this guy is, they're thinking, this guy's a steroid abuser. He's big. I've run across, Wiki says 6'4", 223 pounds. That's big. He's bigger than any of those guys, tougher than any of those guys.
Okay, well, the problem I have is that this reminds me a lot of the case of O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
And